धन्यवाद प्रणाम प्रभु जी से माता जी और शिला प्रभुपाद।
धन्यवाद प्रणाम प्रभु जी। हरे
हरे
कृष्णा प्रभु जी।
कृष्ण।
हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी। धन्यवाद प्रणाम। जय शिला प्रभुपाद।
जय शिला प्रभु।
हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी। धन्यवाद प्रभु जी।
धन्यवाद प्रणाम माता जी। जय शिला प्रभुपाद। ओके। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साधुवैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादां सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कान्ता राधाकान्ता नमस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौरङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्येश्वरं। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्ता स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणी। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। पंचतत्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकम्। So we will be finishing the 13th chapter. This chapter is one of the most important chapter for our exam 3 and 3. So please prepare this chapter very nicely. We discussed about 20 items of knowledge last week, an important section. This we covered. Now we begin with Krishna explains the object of knowledge. Gyeya. Now this chapter's 13th begins with 6 questions. What is Ch13 Gya, which is the body and the knower of the body, knower of the field. Then what is Jnanam? What is Gyayam? And we discuss Jnanam. Krishna explains in verse 8 to 12, 20 items of Jnanam, knowledge. This 20 items is knowledge. Anything apart from that is ignorance, Krishna says. So that covers the Jnanam section. Now comes Gyayam. Gyayam means the object of the knowledge. So it's actually quite technical chapter. So what is Gyayam? Gyayam is knowable. Gyan is knowledge. Gyayam is knowable. And the last two questions are Prakriti and Purusha. Purusha is the next section, which basically means the enjoyer. And Prakriti is material nature. Okay. So Gaya is knowable. The soul and super soul are the real objects to be known. This is important because, okay, let's see. Text 1313 describes the first object of knowledge, that is the soul, the living entity. So what makes this particular section little bit complex is, now what is the object to be known? What is the purpose of knowledge? Is to know the soul and the super soul. The soul is like, if we saw the 5 stages of Brahman realization, we saw there is Annamaya, there is Manomaya or Jnanamaya, Annamaya, then Pranamaya, life, then Manomaya or Jnanamaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. Vijnanamaya realization is via spirit souls. There are many people who kind of are established with the understanding that I am a spirit. So that is Jnanmaya realization. Anandamaya realization is they realize Krishna and they realize their relationship with Krishna. So yeah, first step is knowing that like Prabhupada says, there is confidential, most confidential. Confidential is realizing we are spirit souls. Most confidential is realizing our eternal relationship with Krishna. So both are spiritual realizations. Knowing both is the purpose of knowledge. What is to be known? The soul and super soul are both to be known. Now, one verse describes, which is the 13th verse, describes the soul. And verse number 14 to 19 describes the super soul. So 13:13 describes the first object of knowledge, the soul, the living entity. Benefits of knowing the knowable: if one realizes that we are spiritual living entity, we relish the nectar of life. We become happy. Because Krishna says the cause of misery is bodily identification and enjoying to the level of body. He says, "Ehi samspashacha bhoga dukkha yonana evate." Contact of the senses with the sense object. And why one contact the senses with the sense object? Because one tries to derive happiness from the body. I mean, eating prasad is okay, but especially when it comes to deriving pleasure from the senses, gross or subtle, which kind of encroaches the four regulatory principle, lot of suffering, lot of misery will come from there. And usually people engages in those kind of sense gratification not conducive for our Krishna consciousness, because they want to enjoy at the level of body. So one who can be situated on a spiritual level, distinguish between what is not good for me, what is good for me, then he can be happy. Like Prahlad Maharaj says, don't try to be happy through this material world. If you want to be happy, then stop trying to be happy in this material world. So benefits of knowing the knowable is relishes the nectar of life. No history. Now the jiva here, this verse refers to the living entities, very important. So the living entities are referred to as, in Sanskrit, as anadi. Adi means beginning. beginning. Anadi means no beginning. So does Jiva do not have a beginning? Yes. Um, no history, Prabhupada says, no history of date of Jiva's manifestation available right from the beginning. Is Krishna Anadi? Krishna is also Anadi. Jiva is also Anadi. Um, if the question is asked, so did Krishna created souls? Technically, yes. But then another aspect is they both are simultaneously coexisting since time immemorial. So that's why the soul is referred to as Anadi. Then Prabhupada quotes from Kathopanishad, Na jayate mriyate. Knower of the body has no birth and death, but is full of knowledge. This verse refers to living entity, Vigyan Brahman, and not Anand Brahman. This I addressed earlier. The soul realization and not the super soul of Krishna, Bhagwan realization. Now, the next verse, which is the 14th, refers to the uh, super soul, all pervading, where the Mayavadis or the impersonalist, they have wrong interpretation when they refer to 13th and 14th refer to the same soul. And then they say, well, this is the soul, Anadi, beginning, and he's all pervading. And then they make the soul and super soul characteristics, they combine, they misinterpret them as one, or they falsely or they purposefully misinterpret them as one. And then they think that there is only one within, which is the super soul, which is coming from Brahman. And Mayavadis, they think there is only one. We say two. There is Jiva and there is Paramatma within the heart. Two birds sitting on a trunk of a tree. Mayavadis impersonalists say there is only one thing, one spiritual matter within, and that is soul and super soul are one. There is no distinction, which basically becomes, and which basically means that I am God, because when they are one, so then I am the super soul, then I am Brahman, and so I am God. That's impersonalism. So Prabhupada strictly defines that the 14th does not refer to the soul. The 13th refer to the soul. Now both needs to come because the purpose is to know both. A conditioned soul needs to realize both the soul, the super soul, and the relationship between the soul and super soul. So Prabhupada strongly confirms that this verse, which refers to the all-pervading, describes the super soul, not the living entity. That says super soul has hands, legs, eyes, ears, heads, and faces everywhere. In him exist all unlimited individual living entities. So how do we understand? Krishna says the super soul has hands, legs, eyes, ears, heads, and faces everywhere. So how do we understand that? Prabhupada says, Krishna says, all living entities are in me, but I'm not in them. In the 10th chapter or 9th chapter in his one aspect of his opulence, he says, all living entities are in me, but I'm not in them. And we discussed how Krishna is not in them. Because he's aloof in his personal feature. So he's not in them, but all are in him. Whether you see it from universal form, then we are in him, or we also see how after the annihilation, we all enter into the body of either Garbhodaksha Vishnu after partial annihilation, or we enter into body of Mahavishnu after complete annihilation. So in many ways, it can be seen that we are all in him. So when we are in him, so there are unlimited living entities, they all have their own senses. So in that way, that is one way to say that the super soul has hands, legs, eyes, ears, heads, and faces everywhere. In him exist all unlimited individual living entities, Brahma to small ant. Analogy, sun is all pervading by diffusing unlimited rays. Sun is everywhere. Likewise, the super soul is everywhere. So again, this verse refers to super soul, not the living entity. How impersonalists say that, well, the soul is everywhere. So every living entity is the same spiritual truth, which is Brahman, and we enter back into the Brahman. Okay, so characteristics of the super soul as the object of knowledge. Okay, now there is a list of characteristics, many characteristics. So all pervading, we discussed this, his hands, legs, eyes. This is a summary of this section. Um, so what is to be known? The super soul. What are the various aspects, various characteristics of super soul? These 5 verses describe them. He is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses, Krishna says. Um, Original source of all senses because from like Bhagavatam also says, the living entity eyes are manifestation from the eyes of the universal form. So all the senses are coming from him because he has senses, so we have senses. Then it says, yet he is without senses. Prabhupada describes in the purport because his senses are transcendental by nature. Mm. Or in other words, he has no material senses. Example given are he does not have material hands, but he has hands through which he accepts the sacrifices. He does not have material legs, but he has legs, and that's why he can go anywhere, wherever he wants to go. Like Gajendra Moksha pastime, when he went to Gajendra, Dhruv Maharaj, he's doing tapasya. Lord went to Dhruv Maharaj, gave his benediction, so he can go anywhere he likes. So his legs are not material. Material legs have foundation. Spiritual legs no foundation. Spiritual hands no foundation. Spiritual eyes no foundation. We can see only limited things, but the vision he gave to Arjuna, he could see the entire universe. No foundation. Um, and if Krishna mercy is there, then like Arjuna could have a divine vision. It was so no material vision was in play at that point of time. The demigods also had divine vision that they could see. So he is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. Unattached, although he is the maintainer of. This second point resonates with every aspect of super soul. He is Nirankar, means does not have a material akar. His form is Satchitananda. Generally, akar is blood, flesh, like that. So he does not have any such akar. So he's Nirankar. Um, Nirguna, he does not have any qualities because all his qualities are transcendental. So everything about the Lord is Nir means like just like we say the living entity should become desireless means he should become free from material desire. We say lust, anger, envy are not good. One should become free from anger means free from material anger. One can have spiritual anger like Hanuman and others. So whenever scripture says no, 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 refers to material, whether with respect to living entities or whether with respect to the Lord. Unattached, although he's a maintainer of all living entities, this is another aspect of the super soul that he is not attached. Usually, when we maintain somebody, like we have maybe siblings, family members whom we are maintaining, so we become very possessive of maintaining them. We become very attached to them when we maintain somebody. But the Lord is maintaining all of us, but he's not attached. Like those who we are maintaining, we don't want them to suffer because we feel like we have taken their responsibility. So anything they lack, we feel like we become very attached to their like all and all happiness, all and all maintenance. But here it says that the Lord is the maintainer of every living entity. One devotee told me today that he wants to join full time, and he was expressing how there is fear of he's a working person right now. He wants to join full time, but then he has a fear of what will happen and if Krishna will engage him and if Krishna will take care of him. So I was saying that Prabhu, one aspect of surrender is Krishna is the maintainer. Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes 6 angas of surrender. And Prabhupada says, Krishna feed elephants without him showing any devotion to him. Why will Krishna not feed devotees who are dedicating their lives to him? Um, One reporter asked Prabhupada, I'm sure we discussed this earlier. The reporter asked Prabhupada, so how many full-time devotees in ISKCON? Prabhupada said around 10,000. Wow, 10,000. So then the reporter asked Prabhupada, so how you are maintaining 10,000 people in the temples? How you are maintaining them? Prabhupada said, Krishna provides. So the reporter could not believe. The reporter said, no, Swamiji, how are you maintaining 10,000 people in your organization? Prabhupada says, Krishna provides. Then the reporter like, Swamiji, wait, does not answer my question. What are you doing? How are you maintaining? What actions are you taking to feed 10,000 members? Prabhupada paused and said, Krishna provides. So this is like just matter of faith. Krishna provides. So Krishna is the maintainer. Krishna is the maintainer of all living entities, but he's unattached. Uh, so this is a great quality as a maintainer, he is not attached. When a living entity suffers, neutral, everywhere neutral, uh, then transcendental to the modes of material nature, although he's the master of all modes. Now, usually when somebody is the master of something, um, he like he runs the show in a way. He engages in what he's master of. For example, if somebody is a master of a company or a owner of a company or the controller of a company, then he is involved in the affairs of the company. Naturally, he's involved because he's a master. So one of the quality of super soul is he's the master of the modes, but he does not involve with the modes. And like he owns them, but he does not touch also. Completely aloof. So there's one quality of super soul. And one thing that we have here, that when the Lord interacts with the three modes, the interaction is through the glance, and that glance is Lord Shiva. In other words, he is the master of the three modes of material nature. Whatever he desires, the three modes performs through his Satya Sankalpa Shakti, which basically means anything the Lord desires happens. The material nature makes that happen, but he is transcendental to them. These are like beautiful characteristics of the Lord described in this 13th chapter. Again, this is Gyan Yoga. And that's why, and everything is connected to Krishna. This is Gyan Kam Bhakti Yoga. But a lot of things comes in these chapters. He is inside and he is outside and inside of all living beings, naturally. Paramatma, Brahman, in different features. This is easy to understand. He is subtle and beyond the perception of material senses, means, and the same is said about the soul also. Second chapter says the soul is imperceivable, imperceptible, invisible, and various terms are used. Means you cannot do an experiment in the lab and show the soul. Likewise, he's subtle and beyond the perception of material senses. Eyes cannot see him, and tongue cannot taste him. He is undivided, although appears divided among all beings. Prabhupada gives an example. Sunlight is there here, is there in India, it's there in wherever, London, appears to be divided but undivided. Likewise, the Lord is in all living entities, but he is one. Then he is a maintainer of all, also devours and develops all. So devours, Prabhupada says in the purport, how he devours through the time factor. Krishna says in the 11th chapter, time I have come to destroy all living entities. So he devours all. And then he develops all. How does he develop? Like the living entities, they get the body and the body is developed. So that's also by his potency. He provides. He maintains, he creates the bodies, it develops, he devours everything, him only. Then he is the source of all knowledge, and these are specifically the characteristics of super soul, because super soul is Shiv Dakshay Vishnu. Shirodakshai Vishnu or Garbhodakshai Vishnu, they take care of everything within the material universe. All these characteristics are within this universe. How he maintains, all the senses come from him. He has his hands, legs, ears everywhere. This is not describing the Bhagwan feature, but it is naturally a, I mean, they are part and parcel of Krishna, but they are all relating to within the material universe, beyond the perception of material senses, undivided, devout, developed, source of knowledge and enlightenment. Anyways, then he is the source of knowledge and enlightenment. Um, mm, Realization also comes from him. Knowledge also comes from him. And Krishna also says, like, we also say, Divyagyan Hire Prakashito, knowledge is revealed. He is within our heart, and he will give us the realization based on our adhikar. Mm. He will reveal the nature of this material world. So the knowledge and enlightenment also comes from him. And today we were discussing evening that knowledge, there is something called Gyan and Vigyan, and there is something called understanding and realizing. Understanding is by hearing, realizing is when the Lord speaks to us. That is realization. Realization means we got it. Understanding means we heard it, we understood it. So from that perspective, the knowledge, the actual knowledge and real enlightenment comes from him. He is situated in one's heart. This is very clear. Then further characteristics, super soul as the knower. This is like super soul as Geya, object of knowledge. Then super soul as the knower and super soul as the enjoyer. Super soul as the knower of the field. He is knower of all the bodies. We know our, but he knows all. This we discussed earlier. He is a supreme proprietor and controller. He owns everything. He controls everything. How he controls everything? Because our body is under the control of material nature, and he controls the material nature. So he's Sarva Karana Karana. So he's the control of everything. Everything. He owns everything because from him only comes Pradhan, then Mahatattva, and then the elements. So everything, he owns everything, and the whole universe is product of from Mahatattva and false ego comes earth, water, fire, air, ether, and then everything is created. Then infallible and always superior to spirit soul. The difference between soul and spirit soul and super soul. Soul is fallible. Super soul is infallible. Then this we will see later, but we are putting it here only just to complete the characteristics of super soul at one place. We are putting everything here. He's a transcendental enjoyer. The next section speaks about the Purusha. Purusha means the enjoyer. So we are the enjoyer of the modes, and he is a transcendental enjoyer. He does not enjoy matter. He is the Anubanta and Upadrishta. Upadrishta means he observes everything, and that's how we get the reaction based on our karma, because he is everything. He's looking. We cannot cheat him. We are responsible for every action, every thought, every desire. He's watching. So actually, a devotee is careful because he knows I am being watched. Bhakti is a matter of heart. He's watching. Today I was talking to Jayapataka Maharaj. Some of us, basically temple brahmacharis, we had a meeting with Maharaj. So Maharaj said, so would any one of you like to ask any question? So I asked this Maharaj, how to make the mind favorable to Krishna. Because how our consciousness can always be favorable because our progress in Krishna consciousness is based on how favorable is our desire, is our activities, more than activities, desire um, to Krishna, to serve Krishna. And mind is an obstacle. It also requires actually the intelligence. See, Bhakti Park is very obscure path. In other words, we cannot make progress unless Krishna helps us. If Krishna doesn't give us realization, we won't even realize what is Anukul and what is Pratikul, what is favorable, what is unfavorable. And when it is unfavorable, Krishna won't even give us the realization this is unfavorable. We will just be in that zone, in that thought process, and even the thought won't come, hey, this is not good for you. And because Krishna says, from me comes remembrance, from me comes forgetfulness, he'll make us forget the definition only of what is good and what is bad. It will be like, a dark, illusory cloud created and we are just submerged into it. We cannot think out of it. We are so controlled by Krishna, and we cannot make progress unless Krishna intervenes and helps. Finally, Jayapataka Maharaj, he says, Prabhu, the process is gradual. There is no shortcut to Krishna consciousness. But as long as we are in good association, we are trying. Krishna loves us. Krishna loves all of us beyond our imagination. So Krishna helps all of us. And only when Krishna helps do we rectify ourselves. Without the help of Krishna, we are helpless. And the only option we have is, that's why uh, if we ask Krishna, like, if Krishna asks us, like, so you want to go back to Godhead? And we say, yes, we want to come back to me. So Krishna asked, like, okay, so what have you done to come back to me? What sadhana have you done to come back to me? So we may say, my Lord, nobody comes to you because of one sadhana. Anybody who comes to you is by your mercy only. Our sadhana is just like, just like showing Krishna we are doing my part. That's all. Our sadhana, our sadhana cannot do much. Our mercy only. We are mercy cases. If Krishna gives his mercy, he will pull us. Um, like I remember there is one story of this comes in Journey Home, where my spiritual master was living in Barsana. And at that point of time, there was a lion who was eating sadhus. So Maharaj was living with one more Baba in Barsana, Barsana Baba, one Baba from Barsana. So they were sleeping, everybody was scared. The tiger would come, lion would come and eat the children, eat anybody. Some people died actually. And Barsana, if you go to Barsana, it's open area, long, huge, um, and there are only few places accessible through stairs. Everything else it's a mountain. Unlimited places are there. One time we went to Barsana Sriji Mandir in the night. So we asked the pujari, can we go to Man Mandir? They said, no, don't go to Man Mandir, andhera ho gaya. It's like that. One time I was staying in Barsana for a few days. So one devotee, he said that you can come to Man Mandir. We can stay together in Man Mandir. So I was going with him. So he said, he was merciful onto me on that day. Just that's all. Um, so he said, let's meet here at 9:30. So I went. I was staying somewhere else in one Rajvasi's home. Then I packed my bag, came to the foot of Barsana hill, where he said we'll go together. And it was night. And then he says, now be careful. Usually we don't go at this point of time in the night. But let's go, depending on Radharani's mercy. So it's there also. This is there. So this is there that time also, like 50 years back, or yeah, whatever. So Maharaj was with this Baba. So Baba was keeping a stick, small stick, this much long. That's it. And they were sleeping in open area. So Maharaj asked Baba, Baba, why are you keeping this stick? Maharaj was just 19, 20 years old that time. So Baba said, well, I'm keeping this stick um, to show to Krishna that I am doing my part, so that when tiger comes, then Baba told Maharaj, if tiger comes, we cannot do anything. This stick cannot save us. But I'm just showing to Krishna that Krishna, see, I'm taking care of myself by using this stick. So our sadhana is like that. Our sadhana, like kripa of Krishna, can rectify our consciousness, can make us distinguish between what is anukul, what is pratikul, can bring us and keep us out of illusion, give us a divine vision of seeing things as they are, to be able to distinguish between what is matter and what is spirit. Everything is based on Krishna only. Matta smriti jnanam apohanam cha, forgetfulness comes from him, knowledge comes from him. He says jnanam, knowledge comes from me. Everything comes from Krishna. You're like Katputle hum log, just puppets. Only out of false pride and false ego we think we are the doer and we are in control, and other conceptions. कुछ भी नहीं है हमारे हाथ में. So it's not by sadhana that one can go back to Godhead. Prabhupada very clearly mentions in the purport. The Prabhupada says our going back to Godhead is not dependent upon our hearing and chanting. Everywhere he says, chanting, hearing, but in this purport he says our going back to Godhead is not dependent upon our hearing and chanting. And he says it is dependent upon mercy of Krishna, full stop. Our going back to Godhead is dependent upon mercy of Krishna. Rasika Bhoi Prabhu was referring to one scripture, I don't remember, but he showed me a verse and he says, see Prabhu, here it says, only that person goes back to Godhead who attracts the mercy of Krishna. Whoever Krishna wants to call, he will go, not the person who has his own conception of what will qualify him. Nothing can qualify us. Thinking that I can, that's why it is said, like, you cannot bind Krishna by a process. Abhigaswarat, right? Completely independent. Whoever he chooses will live with him. This is Krishna. So he watches everything, every single thought, every single consciousness he's watching, and he will bring it back to us. So a devotee should be fearful. Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, fear is also needed. Fear in goodness is one know what is to be afraid of, what is not to be afraid of. Should not be afraid of losing some material enjoyment, should not be afraid of temporary things, but should be afraid of like Vaishnava Aparad. Should be afraid of, there are things we should be afraid of. Should be afraid of our thinking. Should be afraid of captured by Maya. No guarantee tomorrow we may do something not conducive for our bhakti. We should be constantly afraid of, oh, Maya can capture me. There should be a strong guard against us. We cannot take Maya cheaply because she is very powerful. In a moment, independent of, जैसे होता ना, जैसे हाथों में मसल सकती है हमें, वो ऐसे करेगी और हम लोग मसल जाएंगे, कुछ नहीं कर पाएंगे हम लोग. Prabhupada is telling, what is Prabhupada's power, what is Prabhupada's devotion, what is Prabhupada's qualification. He is telling, I am constantly praying to Krishna, Krishna, please protect me from Maya. very, but she works under Krishna's direction. So Krishna observes. Krishna tells Maya, "This is the reaction for that. This is for that." So it's like that's why we should be afraid of anything pratikul, any thought pratikul. One devotee asked me, one devotee said, Prabhu, my mind is very disturbed. I said, well, what is the disturbance? And he said, I am finding fault with devotees. I told him, Prabhu, this is dangerous. This is dangerous. You have to rectify that. He asked me why my mind is finding fault with devotees. I said, because of your past sinful reactions. This is from Bhagavatam. When we break the principles in any form, our mind will become disturbed. Our mind will become pratikul, not favorable for bhakti. But Jayapataka Maharaj gave a very nice long answer on how to make our mind pratikul, anukul to bhakti. What is bhakti? What is the definition of bhakti? Anukulyana Krishnanu Shilana Bhakti Uttama. Has to be anukul, favorable to Krishna. Bhakti of demoniac nature, like Hiranyakashyap, Ravana, is not bhakti. Although they can still remember Krishna, but they will not get Krishna prem. They will get only liberation by that remembrance of Krishna. Only Anukul Bhakti will give us prem. Maharaj was mentioning yesterday in the class that I have a disease. Maharaj said, I have a disease. My disease is I am mad in love of Krishna. The disease of a madness, crying, hair standing on end, can't think anything because become mad, prema matta. Wow, everybody said Hari goes. He can speak because he has shown it by his own example. And we cannot speak like that. So overseer and permitter, then maintainer and real friend. But he's also Suhritam Sarvabhutana. He's friend. How he is friend? You approach him, he will sanction. Ye yathamam papadyante. He is a maintainer, he is real friend. Then science of Kshetragya, Jnanam and Geyam is most fully understood only by devotees. Krishna says all these things can be understood Madhbhakta, only by my devotees. Others cannot understand. Okay, then second last section, Krishna explains Prakriti, Purusha and their union. There are two kinds of Purusha. There is Jiva and there is Paramatma. So now Prakriti and Purusha, the last section is Jnana Chakshu, seeing with the eyes of knowledge. Here Krishna introduces the interaction between Jiva, Purusha and Prakriti. So Purusha is enjoyer, two kind of enjoyer, material enjoyer, transcendental enjoyer. Living entities are material enjoyer. Krishna or Vishnu or super soul, transcendental enjoyer. We enjoy the modes. So there is an interaction between the jiva and modes. We enjoy the mode entangle us. And based on the mode we enjoy, the modes give us the next birth based on the mode. We enjoy mode of passion, the resultant will be birth in the mode of passion. We enjoy the mode of goodness, birth in the mode of goodness. We enjoy mode of ignorance, birth in the mode of ignorance. Sad asad yonishu, um, uh, um, good and bad species based on karanam gunasango, how we associate with gunas. So this is the concept of interaction between the jiva and the modes. The modes are trying to enjoy and the modes capture the jiva. and when the modes capture the jiva, comes happiness, distress, and next birth. So this is explained in 3 verses. So total 7 verses explains the enjoyer, 2 kind of enjoyer. This is a summary. One is jiva, one is paramatma. One verse, number 24, describes Paramatma as the enjoyer. 25th, 26th, how, okay, we will see three sections within these 7 verses. First 3 verses, Jiva, what kind of enjoyer the Jiva is, what is the interaction between the Jiva and the modes, and what is the effect of the interaction between Jiva and modes. Who is the real transcendental enjoyer, and how to get this complete understanding. What are the various ways we can understand this? The interaction between the Jiva and the Prakriti, living entity, and the modes. One who understands the interaction between them, Krishna says they will attain liberation. So this slide discuss about the interaction between Jiva and Prakriti. Next slide, transcendental enjoyer. And whatever we discuss in this slide, how we can understand it, realize it, what are the ways to realize it, is the 3rd slide. So these 3 slides cover this section. So Krishna explains Prakriti, Purusha, and their union. First type of Purusha is Jiva, also explains interaction between Prakriti and Purusha. Again, 3 modes is Prakriti, Purusha, we are referring to the living entity, or the living entity and 3 modes. Maya and Jiva, their interaction is this. Common theme, conditioned soul desire to control and enjoy matter binds him to material nature. Prabhupada says we don't enjoy things, we enjoy the modes. We either enjoy the mode of passion or we enjoy the mode of ignorance. For example, I love to sleep, so I am enjoying the tamogun. I love to help. I love to serve. If it is not Krishna centered, just some friends, neighbors, or cleaning up the park, or society, service to society. I love to serve. There I am enjoying the mode of goodness. I love sense gratification. I am enjoying the mode of passion. So that's what Prabhupada says. The living entity is trying to lord over the 3 modes. He is trying to lord over Maya, lord over the guna, sattva gun, rajagun, tamagun. And as a result, he's captured by them. Just like, one way to think is, we are trying to win over the tiger in a battle, and tiger captures us. So likewise, modes is Krishna's energy. So we are trying to enjoy the 3 modes. And the result is, Prabhupada says, we are further entangled in the modes. This is the kind of enjoyer that the spirit souls are, the jivas are. So conditioned soul desire to control, we try to control the modes. The living entity, that the conditioned soul desire to control and enjoy matter binds him to material nature. Super soul is the factual enjoyer and controller. Everything is in his hand. We are only like, आग के साथ खेलोगे तो जलोगे ही. If you play with fire, we'll only burn ourselves. Likewise, if we play with the modes, we are only going to get the happiness and distress and the next body by the modes. So the enjoyer and controller is the position of super soul or Krishna. Understanding this will lead the conditioned living entity towards liberation. When you understand this, we'll attain liberation. How to understand this is the next slide from this. Then material nature living entities are beginningless. Krishna begins with this verse. This is verse number 20. Both are beginningless. However, unlike living entities, material nature has constant transformation. Maya is eternal, but Maya is constantly changing. Jiva are eternal, but Jiva are not changing. Body is always changing. Jiva is not changing. Maya is also eternal, but constantly changing. Jiva is also eternal, but same, not changing. Only the subtle body changes. It is said Jiva is never impure, always pure soul. Subtle body. We are trying to purify our subtle body. Living entity is always a pure devotee of Krishna, but covered by ahankar. Happiness and distress due to Purusha's identifying with the Prakriti. Material world is a place of struggle, provides different residential quarters. So what is the cause of how are happiness and distress? When the jiva interacts with Prakriti, the result is happiness and distress. Sense gratification is a source of misery. Sense gratification is interaction of the jiva with Prakriti or jiva and Maya. When jiva interacts with Maya, comes happiness and distress. Why? Because attachment and attachment, when we interact with the modes, we become attached. And when we are attached to something, we will naturally won't get all the time. When we don't get, we are miserable. If you're doing the right thing, if you're doing according to dharma, according to religious principle, causes bondage still. And bondage, when it is broken, a lot of suffering, because bondage will break. Everything will be taken away from us anyways at the time of death. All attachments are taken away one by one. So whatever we are attached to will be the source of suffering, even if it is according to dharma. Happiness and distress will be there. And when it is adharmic, then the misery increase unlimited times. So happiness, jiva interact with Maya, the result is happiness and distress. And what is and Krishna says it's a place of struggle. Why? We have provided different residential quarters. Okay, you live in a human body, now a dog body, now a cat body, now an ant body, now a grass body. Now you want to fly, go for a bird. You want to become a fish and be eaten by a whale now, or larger fishes, or struggle to find the regular food. Any body you take, struggle is there. Any body you take, struggle is there. Whether a lion body or a deer body or a monkey body, struggle. Struggle to defend, struggle to survive, struggle to find the basic necessities, struggle is there. So this is material world is a place of struggle. And this is by Jiva's interaction with Maya. Based on how he tries to lord over the Maya, Maya gives him the body accordingly. This is interaction between Jiva and Maya, Purusha and Prakriti. This is one of the questions by Arjuna. Explain what is Kshetragya, Jnanam, Geyam, Prakriti and Purusha. So Krishna starts explaining Purusha as the Jiva. Then desire to enjoy forges the bond between Purusha and Prakriti, like tightens the bond. We become further entangled by three modes, by Maya, when we desire to enjoy. Association with material nature leads to different good and evil among various species. Karanam guna sangosya sarda sadyoni janmashu. Guna sango, when we associate with guna, sattogun, rajagun, tamogun, that results in sad-asad yoni janmashu. We take good and bad, good and evil species are cast upon us by our association with the material nature. Association with passion, human birth. Association with goodness, heavenly birth. Association with ignorance, hellish birth. Sad-asad yoni janmashu. So this is the result of our interaction with Maya. Then this slide explains the transcendental. Second type of Purusha is mentioned as super soul. He is never entangled like ordinary Purusha. Ordinary Purusha is Jiva. Jiva becomes entangled. When Jiva enjoys, Jiva entangles, gets entangled because he enjoys Maya. He tries to enjoy Maya, matter. Super soul does not interact. He is the master, but he does not interact. He is a transcendental enjoyer. He is mentioned as para, which implies transcendental. He is different from the individual soul. So it's very, very clear. There is super soul, like here, the word used is paramatmeti, the Sanskrit word used, very clear. There is Atma used earlier, there is Paramatmeti used here, but still the misinterpreters defined there is one enjoyer who is Purusha, the Jiva. And they bring super soul and Jiva at the same level, and this is condition, there is only one. So it's very important to try to understand it from like Prabhupada's purport to be able to understand it. So he is mentioned as Paramatmiti word is used, which implies transcendental. He's Para. He is different from the individual soul. The Lord is the supreme well-wisher. In conditioned state of living entity, Lord stays with the living entity. So how is Krishna our well-wisher? How is the Lord our well-wisher? He lives with us. Why he lives with us? He wants us to go back. This is ultimate desire. But we can go back only by his mercy. He is the best friend, yet he is unattached. He is neutral. He is the maintainer, he is unattached. But it's like Prabhupada says, um, Lord wants us to turn towards him. And when we turn towards him, then Krishna gives us realization. And then we can start seeing things as they are. Next slide discuss this. Association, good association helps us to understand the subject matter. Association of pure devotees. Okay, in conditioned state of living entity, Lord stays with the living entity to get him back. Lord stays with the living entity. Purpose, Lord stays with us. He actually wants us to go back. Lord is always instructing from within, trying to convince us that the material world is not conducive to happiness. Give it up and turn your feet to me. Prabhupada's purport. Then how does an intelligent person act? Prabhupada says an intelligent person places his faith in the Paramatma and begins to advance to a blissful eternal life of knowledge. So Paramatma is always giving us good counsel. That voice is there. He's always guiding us because he's our well-wisher. Prabhupada also says, but we have a natural tendency to reject him. Prabhupada says natural tendency. Why? Because of the ego interface. Because Paramatma is in the soul, then the soul is covered by ego. So Paramatma gives us good counsel, good guidance. But ego wants to be the center, wants to be the enjoyer. And ego is very strong, very, very strong. Most of the time, Prabhupada says natural tendency to reject the voice of Paramatma. The Lord gives good counsel, but the living entity misuses his free will because of the strong, subtle body. And then the Lord is overseer and permitter. But he is waiting, but he wants us back. Falastuti of this section, knowledge of philosophy explained causes liberation, no more birth, one who understands the interaction between Prakriti and Purusha, between Maya and Jiva, no more, one who understands it, no more birth, causes liberation. One can achieve this understanding through various types of yogas, Dhyana Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, Karma Yoga. Krishna explains in 25th verse. We want to come to the understanding of how the sad asad yonishu janmashu, good and evil births, if we associate with karanam guna sangosya. If we associate with guna, then it gives good and evil birth, and it gives happiness and distress, and it entangles us. So this is what Krishna explains in 20 to 23. 24, he says Paramatma as the transcendental enjoyer. And now he says one who understands the interaction between Jiva and Maya is liberated. There are various ways. Through Dhyan, you come to realize the material modes, the Jiva, and become detached, give up the desire to enjoy, and turn towards the Lord. This is whatever we discussed. Some perceive the super soul through meditation, some so either through Dhyan or through Sankhya or through Karma. One can achieve this understanding without working without fruitive desire. Bhakti, then Krishna says the easiest is Bhakti. Bhakti is the easiest and best path to understand the science. They begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of tendency to hear, they also transcend the path of birth and death. Those who are not in knowledge, if they give their ears, Prabhupada says Bhakti means you lend your ears to somebody, to authorized sources, to pure devotees, to Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You lend your ears. So because of that tendency to hear, they also transcend the path of birth and death, even if they are not in knowledge. Lord Chaitanya recommends, as per Srimad Bhagavatam, this from the purport. Lord Chaitanya recommends, as per Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.3, that there is no need to change your position, but only give up the endeavor to know absolute truth by speculative reasoning. Learn to become servant of those in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada says, just don't speculate about who Krishna is, who Super Soul is. Give up your endeavor to know Supreme through speculation and become the servant of those in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. And who are those servants? Pure devotees. By good fortune, take shelter of pure devotees. Hear from them, follow their footsteps, thus elevate to pure devotion, which means Diksha, initiation from spiritual master, which means hearing from Prabhupada purports, discussing from Prabhupada purports, which means association of pure devotees like Jayapataka Maharaj came, Chandramauli Maharaj came, Bhakti Purushottam Maharaj is coming here. Hear from self-realized soul who have transcended. Yes. Become a sincere servant of those in knowledge, take shelter of them, hear from them, follow their footsteps. And this is the sure shot and the easiest way to develop the understanding of the interaction between Jiva and Prakriti. Because this chapter is very complex, but the essence is association of pure devotees will help us understand. And once we understand, because Krishna says simply lend your ears, and then you will also be able to escape the cycle of birth and death. Now, the last section is Jnana Chakshu, the vision of knowledge. Realized person can distinguish between spirit and matter in all circumstances. Realized soul, they don't become bewildered. This is like very simple but very deep statement based on how we take it. They can distinguish between spirit and matter, or they can distinguish between the favorable to bhakti and unfavorable mind. Matter includes gross and subtle body, subtle matter. Distinguish between spirit and matter means they can hear, they can act in a Krishna conscious way in all circumstances. That means a pure subtle body. That means Anukul Bhakti, favorable to Krishna. That is only realized person who are always acting and always able to see from gross and subtle way, are always Krishna conscious, a very pure state. So that is realized person, can distinguish between spirit and matter in all circumstances. One who sees the indestructible super soul, always accompanying the indestructible individual soul in all bodies, is the actual seer. In simple words, one who sees that Paramatma is always with living entity. One who sees that the Lord is always with me in my heart. actually sees. How such vision is possible? Then Prabhupada says by good association with real knower or spiritual subjects. Who is the actual? This is called Jnana Chakshu. Jnana Chakshu means now we are not just understanding, but we are seeing whatever we have understood. We are living it. This is called Jnana Chakshu. So one who can feel his Paramatma is in their heart, they are actually realized. Very nice. And if one cannot see, then good association, Prabhupada says, can help. Like everything Prabhupada says, association of pure devotees, like constantly Prabhupada emphasizes on association of pure devotees. One who sees the super soul equally present everywhere in every living being does not degrade himself by the mind. And this is another effect of Jnana Chakshu. Jnana Chakshu means one sees the soul, one sees the super soul, one sees the super soul in the heart of all living entities, not only in oneself, but in the heart of all living entities. And when one sees the super soul in the heart of all living entities, one does not degrade himself by his mind. This is very difficult state to attain actually, to see Krishna in the heart of all living entities. This is Jnana Chakshu. Krishna is sitting in their heart, and Krishna loves them. Krishna is in the heart of all living entities, and Krishna loves them. Krishna wants them back. Any living entity, whoever they are, they may not know, but they're searching for Krishna. They're looking for Krishna only. Everyone is looking for Krishna. So one who can see Krishna in the heart of all living entities, one who can see super soul equally present everywhere in every living being, he won't degrade then the mind won't degrade him. Otherwise, uh, if this Jnana Chakshu is not there, then this vision of knowledge is not there, then um, mind um, will not be a very good friend. Mind is, Prabhupada says in the purport, mind is generally addicted to sense gratification. When the mind turns to super soul, one becomes advanced. Generally, mind and false ego will see everything with respect to being the enjoyer. This is like, that's how we interact with the three modes and become entangled. But when by the mercy of pure devotees, by the mercy of Lord Krishna, when we get a Jnana Chakshu, which is the vision of knowledge, and we see things with the way it is described here, when we start seeing this, then the mind will become favorable. One will not degrade himself by his mind. He sees that neither he nor others are acting. This is another aspect of Jnana Chakshu. I think there are 2 or 3 slides in this. This is the last. He sees that neither he nor others are acting. All activities are performed by the body, which is created by material nature. He sees that all living entities, um, none of them is, he sees that um, all the activities are the effect of 3 modes. Actually, when this Jnana Chakshu, when we get this Jnana Chakshu, all good qualities will develop. If we see how every living entity is acting under the influence of 3 modes, we can see that only when we go above 3 modes. When we are in 3 modes, we cannot see others are acting in 3 modes. And then there will be the interaction. There will be happiness and distress. But this chapter is very high actually. But if and when Bhagavad Gita, everything is like this, spoken from a pure consciousness. If at all the stage comes that we go beyond 3 modes, great. Then we can see the other living entities are acting based on 3 modes. Then we know anybody acting out of 3 modes is suffering and miserable. Then we want to help them. And when help is offered from a pure state of consciousness, it's well received. When help is offered from egoistic platform, then it is not well received. Anyways, all activities are performed by the body, which is created by the material nature. He sees nobody's acting, the three modes are acting. Whatever action, three modes are in play. Only the body acts, living entity is distinct from the fields of activities. The soul is aloof. Soul is desiring Krishna. Soul is suffering separation from Krishna, in anxiety because lost in this material world. And getting different residential quarters purposes. Again and again, newer and newer residential quarters. The soul is bound up in this samsara. But the body is acting, and the body is acting under three modes. Conclusion: one should be neither disturbed nor envious. He should act properly and see the super soul, the ultimate sanctioning agent present in all beings. When one get a jnana chakshu, then this will happen. When you see everything from a spiritual perspective, then one should be neither disturbed nor envious. Why become envious? We become envious because somebody is doing better than us. That arise because of false ego. I am the enjoyer. How can somebody be the enjoyer? And then we think somebody else is a doer. We don't see how the other person is able to do, because Krishna is sanctioning that person to do something better than what I am able to do. So envy won't come, because you see the hand of Krishna. Jnana Chakshu means body is not the doer. Krishna sanction. And distress, one will not be distressed in Jnana Chakshu stage because somebody misbehaves. Krishna is sanctioning. Why Krishna is sanctioning? Must be because I have a desire to enjoy, so Krishna is creating frustration for me. So I give up that desire to enjoy. I have a desire to control, so Krishna is sanctioning, so I give up the desire to control. In whichever way I want to be the enjoyer, Krishna is sanctioning and disturbing me, so I can give up that tendency that is unfavorable for my Krishna consciousness. Disturbance will not be there, envy will not be there. These are the two main emotions anyways, right? Somebody better than us or somebody not very good for us. Either we are disturbed or envious, or we are proud. Either ways, all these things will go away with Jnana Chakshu. If we see super soul in every living entity, and he's sanctioning everything. And so many things that this chapter describes. Okay, further vision of eternity is further explained. One can see that the soul never mixes with the body. This is the second last slide. Another thing is the soul and body never interacts. This fact is explained by two analogies in the next two verses. First analogy is the sky never mixes with anything. Sky is there, everything is there. We have trees, we have houses. Outside I see a window. We have everything, we have a sky, but the sky is not mixing. They are aloof. Likewise, the soul is there, the body is there. The body has so many things, just like this material world has so many things. There's blood, there is bone marrow. There is so many things in the body, but the soul does not interact. Just like so many things in this material world, sky does not interact. They never mixes. Soul is just being carried within the region of a heart by the body. It's just a residential quarter purposes. Air enters mud, stool, water, but does not mix with anything. Likewise, soul can be anywhere situated, but soul does not mix with anything. Another analogy Krishna gives: as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, similarly, living entity illuminates the entire body by consciousness. Sun does not mix with this material world. but sun gives light everywhere. Sun illuminates everything. Likewise, the soul does not mix with anything within the body, but gives consciousness to the entire body. So Krishna gives these two examples to help us understand that the soul never mixes with the body. This is the last verse, 35th. It's a one verse chapter summary as it is described in the purport. That is, seeing with the eyes of knowledge, one attains the supreme goal. One who can have this Shastra Chakshu, this Jnana Chakshu, one who can understand these things, these 6 things, one attain the supreme goal. Understand the super soul, understand the enjoyer, the false enjoyer, true enjoyer, Prakriti, the interaction with the Prakriti, the effect of interacting with the Prakriti, good and evil species we take birth in. One who understands the object of knowledge is the actual super soul, the enjoyer is the super soul. One who can understand the items of knowledge, the 20 items of knowledge, and can act on those. So one who can apply this chapter, one seeing with the eyes of knowledge, one that person can attain the supreme goal, which is again, it is not easy. It's a very high chapter, very difficult to understand, also very philosophically packed, this chapter. But gradually, how can one get to the point to have this Jnana Chakshu, to see with the eyes of knowledge? How does the process works? So Prabhupada describes beautifully in the purport, which makes sense to all of us. Faithful persons should have some good association, have some good sangha, hearing in good association, accepts a spiritual master, know the difference between body and matter as the stepping stone for further realization. Understand I am spirit soul, not this body. Try to act on that. Use that understanding to go to the next level. Analyze the body with 24 elements, our bodies or any body, even of an animal. Every body is made up of 24 elements. Then analyze the soul and super soul are separate. The body, constitution of the body. This is the summary in this verse. Body, constitution of the body, then the soul, then the super soul, interaction of the soul with the body, interaction of soul with the 3 modes. Goal is to know the super soul. Super soul is the enjoyer. Turn towards super soul with faith. So analyze the soul and super soul as separate, not as one, which is impersonalism. These things are meant for contemplation and for realization. And whatever we discussed, Prabhupada says they are meant for contemplation. Think about them. Meditate on them. Spend some time with them. And again, this chapter for the exam 3 will be a very important chapter that we want to thoroughly understand. It's a complex chapter, but very important. These things are meant for contemplation and for realization. You contemplate, you get the realization. Then have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of the spiritual master. And that comes the end of 13th chapter. Now we are good to take any discussions at this point of time.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji,
Dandapranam.
Prabhuji, my inquiry is, we heard that due to strong body, the free will, the soul misuses his free will. Due to strong subtle body, the soul misuses the free will. Prabhuji, my inquiry is like, and the soul is interacting with the modes, not the things actually, but the modes. So Prabhuji, the modes, does they cover the free will of the soul, or does they cover the subtle body?
Does the modes cover the subtle body or
the free will of the soul? Does the modes cover the subtle body, or they cover the free will? Are the modes able to reach the free will at any point of time, or does they reach to subtle body only?
Prabhuji, see, free will is like Prabhupada says, our free will is not free. It is covered by the modes, Prabhupada says. Prabhupada says the more we become free, the more we become pure devotees, the more we have free will. One example given is to the extent we are within the bodily conception. Like one example given is um, um, like a dog, and we have a rope. If the rope is very short, then the dog is only very 1 meter. You elongate the rope 3 meters, elongate the rope 5 meters. Now the dog can go anywhere within 5 meter range. Further elongate 7 meters range. So this is like how when we become pure devotees, we actually have free will. In our conditioned state, our free will is covered by the modes. For example, we will be forced by mode of passion to act in passion, or we will be forced by mode of ignorance to act in ignorance. Krishna also knows what decision we are going to make now, because Krishna knows how much influence the mode have on us. So in a way, we are completely bound by the modes. Then when we hear from Bhagavatam, Association of Devotees, Bhagavad Gita, then we start getting our free will, and we can say no to the mind which is completely captured. Our intelligence becomes more and more sharper. So then free will becomes more and more accessible. Another thing Krishna says is the regulative principles of freedom. And what is free will checked by our karma? Because our desire are strengthened, like we engage in a sinful activity, our desire to do the sinful activity again increases. And now we want to do the same activity again and more and more. So this is capturing us more and more. And then we are deeply entrenched to act based on our mind. This is all three modes, Prabhu. So pure devotion will actually give us free will. Does that answer, Prabhuji?
Prabhuji, this really clears, actually that indicates that it's actually the free will that is covered, and it's actually the free will that becomes available as the modes uncover in a way.
Yes. And free, yes, Prabhu, perfectly correct understanding. Free will becomes more and more strong. And that requires intelligence, that requires understanding, and that requires strength. That all comes by the path of bhakti. Because sometimes we may have the free will that, yes, I can do this. In material state, we're completely bound by what the mind says. The mind is a driver, which is the three modes. Then we understand, well, this is not it, this is right. But if we don't have strength and determination, then again we are bound. So first intelligence and then the strength. Yeah. All right.
Prabhuji, just to add on, just to get more clarification on that, Prabhuji, when we say that the modes cover the free will, so can we say that the subtle body's influence on the free will is strong? And as modes uncover means as the subtle body purifies. Can we say these two things parallelly?
Can you say that again?
So as modes uncover and they loosen their grip on free will, similarly or simultaneously, the subtle body's influence on free will also reduces. Can we say that?
Yes. Because the soul is perceiving everything. The soul is covered by false ego. The consciousness, the free will are the symptoms of soul. So everything is tainted by the subtle body. Like nothing can come out of the subtle body from the soul without going through the subtle body. So everything is tainted. And the free will, the conscious, everything start arising. And subtle body to become purified needs to be engaged in remember. So mind remember Krishna, intelligence used in how to spread Krishna consciousness movement, false ego by taking a humble position, servant of servant. So in Krishna consciousness. So as a subtle body, then the soul starts emerging out. Like Prabhupada says, our original state of consciousness, Krishna consciousness, is within us. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhyaka Purana Shavanadi Shuddha Chiti Koroyodoy. It will awaken. It is like, it is like we are engaged by the subtle body. And slowly it needs to become transparent. Transparent means then the subtle body will take the soul original consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness. It just covers up the soul consciousness, and the mind is like the original nature of the soul. Always remember Krishna, serve Krishna. The intelligence, false ego turns into real ego, that I am Krishna's servant. Everything is purified. Everything is original. Prabhupada's goal is to come to an original state of consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness. Is it all right?
Oh, yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone has anything else?
Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam, Jai Shri
Rather
Prabhupada.
than the pranams.
So, Prabhuji, can we say that is there any stage where we can say this free will become completely free, like becoming pure devotee? You said more and more as we progress, the modes influence becomes lesser.
Yes.
And naturally, subtle body is basically mind, intelligence, and false ego. So, false ego is very strong. I mean, that's the subtlest one. But
Yes.
as this grip becomes lesser and lesser, will that, is there any particular stage where we can say once you become a pure devotee, meaning without any ulterior motives trying to serve Krishna, then you are previously really free? Or
Yes.
okay.
And the real free will, Prabhuji, is we do what Paramatma says. So in this material world, there is a direct connection between soul and super soul. Whatever Krishna wants, we do. We awaken our original state as a servant of Krishna. So we understand what Krishna wants, we do. Why? Because we're just trying to serve Krishna now. We have no ulterior motives there. It's just our original state is awakened, and we are foreign to this world. And the only purpose of our existence in this world still, in our pure state, is just I am servant of Krishna. Let me serve Krishna whichever way Krishna wants me to serve him. And when we go back, then super soul is not there, but that love between us and Krishna, that will naturally make us desire. Prabhupada said this is actual oneness, which is oneness and desire. So there, right now we are using our free will to choose Krishna. Prabhupada says free will should be chosen to say yes to Krishna, no to Maya. So using our free will. And the more it becomes free, we become more of Krishna, we become more conscious of Krishna. Then we become one with Krishna in desire. And that is a perfect state of Krishna consciousness.
Okay. So all modes are basically covering up the free will. And one thing, Prabhuji, like some of the examples we heard, like one time Maharaj was, or Guru Maharaj was actually having a big congregation in Vrindavan Dham he created there, and the people came and like the older people came and they said, okay, now we want it, and Maharaj immediately gave it back. So also listening to spiritual master, one of the example I was hearing where Srila Prabhupada mentioned to one of his disciple, like in Vrindavan Dham, to construct a temple, but he was saying, Prabhupada, I came here for chanting and hearing, and Prabhupada said, why are you attached to your sense gratification? So it was like boggling to me, but when I understood that what Prabhupada meant is following the spiritual master or authority, or um, is that should be considered as a part of free will, Prabhuji? Because I know it's coming not within, but at least through Guru, if your Guru is asking you to do, that means utilizing our free will to serve Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji. It is we use our free will in a way that it is anukul to bhakti. And when it is anukul to bhakti, Krishna is pleased. Krishna is pleased when devotees are pleased. When all the devotees that we know are pleased with us, Prabhuji, that is the way to get the mercy of Krishna. We're discussing about the importance of Krishna's mercy. Krishna's mercy follows devotees' mercy. When we have devotees' blessings, like Karunamai, if we capture the Karunamai heart of devotees, Prabhuji, success is guaranteed. Guaranteed. Like today I was discussing with Shyam Bishop Prabhu, and after a long time we had some long like association together, because every time I go there is a program, then I go sleep, do the dressing and run from there. I never deal with devotees because so busy. So this time, yesterday also we spent a lot of time, today we spent a lot of time, and he was sharing that, Prabhu, a glass of pure devotee is the goal of all the sadhana we do. Actually, mercy case, right? And mercy of Krishna follows devotee's mercy. Is it all right?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Is there anything else? Today, not many devotees, looks like busy. All right, no problem. Thank you very much. If I spoke anything wrong, please forgive me as a humble servant. Vansha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Dandavat pranam, Prabhuji's Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Dandavat pranam,
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam. Hare Krishna.
Dandavat pranam, Kalyan Mataji, Hare
Thank you, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam. Prabhuji.
Dandavat pranam, Hare Krishna.